At the beginning of 2000s, in Kazakhstan, 80,000 people died annually from diseases of the cardiovascular system. As for the comparative, this is equal to a resident of one small city. Today, the situation has changed radically. Mortality from cardiovascular diseases has increased 4.5 times in 20 years. This was facilitated by comprehensive measures taken by the state. Modern technologies were introduced and highly qualified specialists in the field of cardiovascular medicine were involved. Today, 200 patients undergo cardiac surgery every day in Kazakhstan. Statistics are as follows. Only in 1 year, domestic cardiologists saved the lives of about 76,000 patients. One of those doctors who fight for the lives of compatriots, Beglan Stambol. He's a specialist in stenting the coronary arteries of the heart.
Жалпы мен келгенде 2008 жылы мен 11 айдың 8-і келдім. Сол кезде 2008 жылға
In my first year here, when I arrived on November the 8th, 2008, I operated on 78 patients. And in 2009, I delivered 272 stents. Since 2010, the number of stenting surgeries has increased 4, 5, 7, 800.
400-ге, артынан 500, 700, 800 жыл сайын ұлғайып отырды.
Beglan Stambol is not just a talented doctor. He breathed a new impulse into Kazakhstan's healthcare, a specialist who introduced new technologies. Beglan was one of the first to introduce, use, and develop such a concept as interventional cardiology in the field of treatment of vascular heart diseases.
Жалпы Қытайдың бір сөзі бар. Енді Қытайша оқығаннан кейін
Since I studied in Chinese, I will give an example of one Chinese folk wisdom. In translation, it sounds something like this. Even if I didn't make a big contribution, I shed a lot of sweat. I was one of the first to introduce interventional cardiology in Kazakhstan, which is well developed and used in China.
Stambol, Beglan.
Beglan Stambol came to us for doctoral studies. For 3 years he studied and eventually became a good specialist. Now he is one of our most professional employees, a citizen of our country. When I first was in Astana, I met with the director of the National Scientific Medical Center, Kartaevich. He immediately suggested to me to move to historical homeland to work for the good of my people. He promised that he would provide support and invited me to work at the National Scientific Medical Center. Beglan Stambol was born far away from Kazakhstan on the Chinese land. His parents did not spoil him from childhood but taught him to work. Thus, from the earliest years, he had to work hard. I was the 7th child in the family, worked a lot. I started working at the age of 7. I have an older brother and a younger brother after me. They have been a little pampered by the parents anyway. Work has taught him to be persistent, purposeful. He was used to setting a goal and working hard towards it. He wanted to become a highly qualified specialist and patiently pursued his dream. At school where I studied, there was no case that a graduate who passed the exams well entered a prestigious university. I then, as a schoolboy, wondered what the reason is. Why not to fix the situation? My older brothers and sisters are all doctors, but they did not graduate from institutes, but were educated in colleges. Beglan's determination and thirst for knowledge helped make his dream come true. He managed to graduate from a university in China and become a highly qualified doctor.
Таланттарды қабылдайтын мемлекет бар, мықты. 7 аудан бар, 7 ауданның ішінде мықты балаларды қабылдайды.
At that time, all those who finished school tried to continue their education at the school for gifted children, which was in the Altai territory. I went there, lived in a boarding school for 3 years and graduated from the school. since I was interested in medicine. I first went to a medical university. I studied there for 7 years. After graduation, I started working in the city of Urumqi in the clinic Dostik. This is the first clinic built jointly by the Soviet Union and China back in the 39 or 40s.
Қытай менен Кеңес одағы кезінде құрылған ең алғашқы клиника. Сол жерде жұмыс істедім.
After studying at the university, Beglan Stambol was already working in the advanced hospitals of Beijing. He showed his best and became a cardiologist of the first category. He was considered one of the best doctors along with well-known Chinese specialists. But as the popular wisdom says, rather than to be a sultan in a foreign country, it is better to be a heel on the native land.
Мен осы Қазақстанға келетін алдында үйде жұбайыммен, ағаммен.
Before moving to Kazakhstan, I discussed this with my family, my wife, my brother, and my parents. Like, I want to return to my native land and benefit to my people. Many people supported me and gave me their advice. I remember my father's guidance. Son, go there, not with the desire to get something, but with the idea that I can give. Only then you will be successful.
Барма. Не берем деп бар. Сонда ғана көркейсің.
For 10 years of work in the historical homeland, Beglan Stambol successfully operated on more than 7,000 people. However, this is not a reason for him to be proud, because he does his job for the benefit of his people, and these are not just words. After all, returning to independent Kazakhstan is an opportunity for him to benefit his country.
Біз Қытайда жүрдік, сол жердің азаматымыз, бірақ қалай дегенде әрбір салада болсын өзің.
For example, being in China and being a Chinese citizen, no matter how highly professional you are, no matter in what field of activity, you will still be in second positions, unlike representatives of indigenous nationality. Only after going through this, you feel it. It was only when I returned to my homeland, Kazakhstan, that I felt like a full-fledged citizen of an independent country. You can't buy that feeling when you're away from home. You always feel like a stranger, no matter what positions you hold in a foreign country, what high incomes you have. You are like an orphan in a foreign land.
Оның көзіне жаутаңдап қарайсың. Ал бұл жерде қара шай ішіп отырсаң да сен еркінсің.
In 28 years of independence, about 1 million of our compatriots have returned to their homeland, Kazakhstan, out of 5 million Kazakhs scattered around the world. According to the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection of the population, more than 4,200 families have returned to their country over the past 6 months. And this is about 7,000 ethnic Kazakhs. This became possible due to government of the country developing a special program since the first days of independence and is working on the return of compatriots to Kazakhstan. It is difficult to overestimate the value of the program. And it's not just about the demographic issue. It also contributes to the development of culture, science, sports, and other areas. Our compatriots who have returned to their homeland combine their efforts and make their own contribution in their professional field, developing our country together. However, Beglan Stambol does not consider himself an Uralman. After all, he was born in the Chinese autonomy of Xinjiang, which is historically a Kazakh land. Perhaps this feeling is not accidental, but transmitted from the earth, absorbed with water, because my place of birth is called Altai. This is the birthplace of Osman Batur. He was the first to speak in China, becoming the leader of the first national liberation uprising. There are many reasons that Beglan Stambol seriously thinking about returning to the land of his ancestors. And first of all, this is a question of the future of children and his desire for his descendants to grow up on their land and benefit the motherland. Our father was the headmaster of a school and devoted a lot of time to work. The whole house and our upbringing was in my mother. We were prompted by my mother's threats to tell my father about some of her mischief. Although my father was very kind, hardly capable of offending anyone, but we were brought up with unconditional respect for our parents. Respect for the father and reverence for the mother are the most important laws of education. Respect for elders gives birth to all the best in a person, makes him more filled, loving. Beglan Stambol realized that there is no greater honor than honoring his parents.
Атамның аты Түркістан. Әкем аты Стамбул. Мен туғанда
My grandfather's name was Turkestan. My father's name is Stambol. The time of my birth was during the Cultural Revolution in China. It was at that time that the law came into force that all children born should be called Chinese names. It was at the end of the 69, the beginning of 70, and I was born on March the 1st. I was given the name Yun Jun, which means eternal soldier. My ancestors are from the Altai region, and when my father told my grandfather about my birth, and he asked what my grandson was called, and when he heard Yun Jun, in response, he was very upset and strongly scolded my father, demanding to rename my grandson, and called me Beglan.
Оның атын өзгертті, атын Бegylan деп сол кісі қойған.
Beglan Stambol was born in a family with 10 brothers and sisters. After his return to his historical homeland, he moved his older sister and younger brother. Now, they've also become citizens of Kazakhstan and benefit their native land and their people. First, my brother moved to Kazakhstan, then my 2 sons. In China, I began to feel lonely, missed them much. Therefore, after them, I also decided to return to the homeland of my ancestors and also came to live in Kazakhstan.
Біріншіден мен айтқанда өзі мен әке-шешем бізге қалай тәрбие берді? Мен балаларыма да солай тәрбиелеймін.
I bring up my children same as education I received from my parents. I remember my mother's word, "Son, if you can, try to help everyone. Do good, and don't expect people to thank you. Never ask anyone for anything. Never discuss anyone. Live right like a human. Gratitude will not take long to wait because all good deeds are returned 100-fold. I teach my children to be human. That's what my parents taught me."
Мен балама ең алдымен сол адам болуды айтамын. Өйткені жалпы өзінің әке-шешемнің тәрбиесі және менің ұстаздарымның берген тәрбиесі сол.
Beglan Stambol, returning to the land of the ancestors, found his place here. Now his home is in the capital of Kazakhstan. At delicious dastarkhan, he gathers all his family and friends.
Ол кісі мен қайда, мен 19 жасымызда таныстық, бірге жоғары мектебімізді бірге оқып бітірдік. Негіз қазір қуаласа көз 30 жылдай болды бірге жүргенімізге.
My husband and I met when we were 19 years old. We graduated from university together. We have been together for about 30 years. He's a very serious and sensible person. After leveling all the yes and no's, makes a decision, always goes forward. I try to keep up with him. I'm lucky to have such support. This is how we live, supporting and helping each other in love and mutual respect.
Бір жұмысым дұрыс емес сияқты. Негізі солай. Бір-бірімізге сенеміз, құрметіміз бар деген сияқты.
Care and respect of beloved wife largely contributes to the success of Beglan Stambol in the profession. The support of the whole family, and especially Salia, helps the doctor to be sure that everything is in order at home and he can safely do what he likes, science, operate in patients, and benefit people.
Менің ұстазым айтқан бір сөзі бар. Beglan дейді, әрбір келген науқасты.
My teacher was saying, Beglan, we treat each patient as a loved one, as a relative, parents. Make friends with each patient. Then everything will be fine. Mutual respect and their trust in you will help. There is a Kazakh saying, a good word is half of prosperity. But in the process of recovery, only half of the treatment depends on the treatment itself. The remaining 50% is the mood for the best result, the patient's support.
50% болатын болса, науқастың көңіл-күйін көтерудің өзі, қалпына келтіру, ол 50%.
But sometimes it happens that not everything is in your hands. Medicine is sometimes not powerful. You cannot resist the command of the Lord. So you have no choice but to accept the reality and will of the higher powers, says the doctor. Of course, it is not easy when one of your patients dies. It is impossible to accept it. You seem to do everything, everyone does everything, but you can't help. You think about it all the time. You have it in your head as what you did wrong, why you couldn't save a person. But when a miracle happens and you put on the feet of a completely hopeless patient who arrives in an extremely difficult stage, even after losing the ability to speak, you feel a blessing. And then there is no greater happiness for the doctor.
Kızım var, жұбайым екеуміз, Артем'le келе жатқанбыз. Соны келіп амандасып сосын.
We were with my wife at the market. A man comes up to us and says, "Hello. You didn't recognize me." I say, "I'm sorry, I don't remember." "How? Because you brought me back to life, saved me. I will never forget you." I replied that I would recognize him if he brought me a disc from the operation that showed his heart, so that if I looked at your heart, I could probably recognize you.
Дискіні алып келсеңіз, сол дискіге қарап отырып, сіздің жүрегіңізге қарап, мүмкін сізді мен танитын шығармын деп.
It is certainly difficult for a doctor who performs several heart surgeries a day to remember the faces of all patients. But he remembers patients not by their faces, but by their hearts. He's an experienced specialist who does everything possible to make the heart of every person who turned to him in the hope of help beat.
Жалпы мен өз арманым, мәселен, бір саланы ұстағаннан кейін орган ары қарай дамыту керек. Мәселен, мен жүрек қан тамырларына стенд қойды өз қолымдамын.
I always dreamed that if I took up something, I should be an expert in my field and develop this. I do stenting of the coronary arteries of the heart. There's also a carotid artery, kidneys, other arteries. I do operations on these organs, but among all, the most difficult type of stenting is for chronic heart disease. For example, in China, there is a club of doctors specializing in this problem. It is located in Shanghai. In Japan, in Tokyo, in the United States, it is New York. In Europe, for example, in Milan. And this year I created a Kazakh club where we train new certified specialists in the field of cardiac surgery.
Соны былай айтқан кезде бір жүйелестіріп, жалпыластырып, шәкірттерді тәрбиелеп, оларға мәселен сондай сертификат беріп, қалай істеу туралы.
This name is one of the best in the history of Kazakh medicine, especially the strongest doctor of the treatment of cardiovascular diseases. In general, I think I'm doing my bit. I already have my own students who are working successfully. We constantly cooperate. I help them with advice and advise them in the most difficult cases. They listen to me and trust me. Yes, Beglan Stambol managed to make a significant contribution to the field of medicine, as well as to educate qualified specialists who, same as him by their high professionalism, save people. His mission, to give a second life, restoring the beating of a failing heart, his calling, every day to fight death and win it. This is what he dedicated his life to.